Hey guys, my name is Ryan, and welcome to Overwatch Central. Today we're talking to Jayne about some other bits and pieces to do with the recent PTR patch, to do with armor, Brigitte, D.Va nerfs, and the Reaper buff. He goes over what he thinks about the balance patch, and how he feels we're really close to having a really strong, viable meta, and then we talk about Hero 30 and what he wants to see out of the latest hero. You can find all of Jayne's details in the description below, and it's certainly worth noting that the Tournament of Future Champions is happening this weekend, featuring a hero ban system for the first time with some semi-pro teams. So if you want to check out how that works, you can see the NA games on Saturday and the EU games on Sunday. Twitch.tv/Jayne. We'll have another video going out around then to let you know that these games have gone live. But without further ado, let's get started. Brief introduction to who you are in case somebody's been living under a rock for the past 6 months and has no idea, but also what's going on this weekend, because you have some pretty cool stuff lined up.
Well, hello to those who don't know who I am. My name is Jayne. I'm a Twitch streamer and a YouTuber, but most people know me because I'm also the assistant coach for the Dallas Fuel and used to be the head coach for Team Canada. Yeah, so this weekend what we're going to be doing is hosting a semi-pro tournament, so contenders level teams and some of the best unsigned teams in both North America and Europe are going to be fighting against each other in kind of like an alternate rule set on a one-day tournament. So those tournaments, most notably, are going to involve hero bans, which has been talked about in the community for quite a few weeks now.
Just quickly on that subject of hero bans, you were one of the first to really toy with the idea, and you were like, pick-up group kind of games, having a ban system, trying it out. Has your opinion swayed since people have been talking about it more and bringing up hypothetical examples of how the system could or couldn't work with hero bans? Because you were kind of like, you liked the idea so much that you tried it out yourself. What do you feel about that now?
Well, one of the things is that almost all of the arguments and discussions around hero bans have been completely hypothetical, and some people's arguments have been stronger than others. One of the strongest arguments against hero bans was that it would prevent people like Jonak from playing their signature characters of Zenyatta. So that kind of feedback or idea or, resistance to the idea is what prompted us to make the hero protect system. So in tournament play, how it works is both teams will get to protect one hero, and that means that that hero simply cannot be banned, but you can only do that for one character. And then, after both teams have protected a hero, then the teams can ban a hero. But, in our most recent tournament last Saturday, which was a tournament for subscribers, we had Yeatle, for example, was participating in it. Yeatle is pretty well known on Twitch for being like the #1 wrecking ball. And so when he was playing in the games, his team would always protect wrecking ball so that Yeatle could have his pick. But then the bans and the meta shift became around kind of what characters do you ban in order to make wrecking ball as difficult as possible to operate. So kind of like, what characters best support Wrecking Ball? Is it going to be, the Zarya so that you can bubble the pile drivers? Is it going to be the Pharah because, doing like a Hammond dive with Pharah Sombra is really strong? So we saw teams trying to kind of piece apart and really get to like the core of what makes a Wrecking Ball or what makes Hammond function, what makes him powerful, and try and do targeted bans to that while still keeping the superstar Wrecking Ball player playing Wrecking Ball and not just looking like a clown, walking around with a pie on his face. He's still performing like everybody wanted to, but, the intricacy of strategy was still there in full force. And I think it worked out really well.
And yeah, we'll have some of the gameplay on in the background so people get a rough idea on... Obviously, there's no UI tools or anything. It's just a case of which heroes do you want to protect, which heroes do you want to ban. But people can see how, especially the heroes that get used are very different to what was, up until now, pretty much predominantly GOATs. There must be some stuff from this PTR patch that has surprised you. Like, granted, you've said that you didn't want to theory craft, you didn't want to put yourself out there and say D.Va's dead or D.Va's still going to be around. Is there anything that you've learned over the past week or two that has gone against your expectations, I'd say, when it comes to Brigitte, D.Va, the armor patch? What's caught your interest?
So no, unfortunately not. Nothing's really kind of surprised me here. And my main prediction for this patch, just to summarize, I won't kind of like bait or tease viewers. My main prediction for this patch is that GOATS is going to remain strong in the short term. And the reason why I think that is because the teams themselves that play goats, which is most everyone, over the last however many months have been practicing and perfecting goats. So the patch is not a nerf to the point where teams are going to be able to find something over a weekend that suddenly magically hard counters goats. Goats overall has just had their power level reduced, but it is still a viable strategy, and it's going to be a lot more effective in the hands of teams that have a lot of practice running them. So kind of my prediction for the short term, or the initial meta that's going to come after this patch, is just simply that teams are going to play goats. Yes, it's weaker, but it is by far the composition that they have the most practice on, so they're going to stick with it until somebody or they themselves find something that works even better or counters goats.
There won't be many more PTR patches before the start of Overwatch League Season 2. Like, this will probably be the last proper patch unless Blizzard quickly rush out something. Do you think there is going to be a case of goats at least being the more popular composition going into Stage 1?
I do think that goats will be played in Stage 1. I don't think it'll be absolutely everywhere. And this is kind of the good side of what Blizzard is doing with nerfing goats, in the fact that they haven't killed the composition, they've just made it weaker. And maybe they've made it weak enough that in certain maps, in certain areas, in certain situations, other compositions will be stronger or will be able to more consistently defeat a goat's composition. So hopefully we're getting to the point in time where goats can still be played. It just doesn't need to be played, and it doesn't need to be played in every situation on every map. When we're getting to the point where teams are playing quad tank or goats on maps like Gibraltar, which have historically always been like super high ground maps, when you're getting to that point, maybe your composition has gotten a little bit too overpowered.
The ideal situation is that goats is really good in places like King's Row, where Zarya and Reinhardt were always really good. Even when dive was prominent, you'd get King's Row, the main tank could get Reinhardt, the off tank could go Zarya, and it seemed like it was the only place to play it, right? And then Gibraltar, second point Dorado, that's where dive would come out. So that's the ideal situation, right? Where you have map dependent metas and certain comps being good in certain places.
Absolutely. When you're getting to the point where the little kind of differences in maps or geometry determine which composition on the circle of counters actually is the most viable, or you're getting a team where they realize that traditionally dive is most viable here, but they're bad at dive, so they'll play something else that is almost as viable, that's when you're getting into like a really nice, healthy meta, and I think we're pretty close. I honestly think we're pretty close.
You've sort of alluded twice to the circle of counters, and I think I know what it is. I'm not 100% sure myself, but for those that don't quite know what you're talking about, how would you define a circle of counters? It effectively comes under the three main compositions and metas, right?
So the circle of counters is kind of being alluded to back in Siegel's State of Overwatch video. It was one of the things that he was complaining about with kind of everything having a hard counter, where there's fewer matchups in the game where you can just kind of beat a person if you just have a higher level of skill. You basically look at what they're playing, and then you swap onto what counters them, and then they swap onto what counters you, etc., etc. Now, that happens at an individual level, but it also happens at a compositional level with the different compositions. So if you're looking at goats as a composition, the counter to goats could be something like dive. Now, the scale of balance has certainly gone in favor of goats to the point where that counter doesn't really work as well as it should. But specifically designed dive compositions or extremely mobile compositions, kind of like a Hammond Farah Sombra composition, should be able to dismantle goats. But goats itself, but that dive composition itself should be weak to an anti-dive composition, something with either, a very static defense, kind of with an Orisa, or something like Brigitte and McCree composition. You saw that composition played quite a bit in the World Cup with the Lucio, Zenyatta, Brigitte, and McCree. You've got that chain stun, you've got nice long range damage. You've got nice pressure with the discords and good poke onto tanks to kind of interrupt those dives. And if they do dive in, you're going to be able to kind of just take them out one at a time. But then that composition, whether you're talking the Orisa composition or the Brigitte McCree composition, those are taken out by goats, which are taken out by dive, which is taken out by anti-dive, which is taken out by goats, etc., etc., etc.
Rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah, so when you're adding in kind of like new compositions, if you're adding in a Reaper, for example, into this as kind of the Reaper that counters goats, so you've created this brand new Reaper composition that counters goats, because there's going to be some other composition that counters that composition really easily. It's just going to basically change the flow chart of the game itself, not really create a new Reaper-based meta.
Doesn't really add too much to the mix when it comes to overall team comps that are being run.
No, it doesn't. It's basically a disincentive to be running goats or tank-heavy compositions, because if they do that, you can just kind of like instantly pick Reaper, and then they have to pick something else.
Yeah, especially in something like Ranked, where compositions aren't quite as important as just individual skill and just having the ability to play up against people. That's why Reaper's so good in like the lower ranks, even going as high as like Platinum Diamond. Sometimes you can just have a really pesky Reaper that if people don't deal with him, it's a free game for him.
Yeah, Reaper's going to be one of those characters that in like Gold and Platinum, the lower elos, Reaper is probably going to be a little bit of a problem for individuals. And some people might be able to use Reaper in order to cheese themselves out of Gold and into Platinum. But like these cheesy playstyles for these broken heroes have existed for a while. They've existed with, Brigitte artificially inflated some people's SR. Mercy did it. You even have McCree being one of the most notorious characters that do this, because a lot of people figure out that if they kind of like flank, flash, fan a support, and then immediately like pop high noon, they're going to be able to catch people off guard and get like 2 kills or something like that, and
like Roadhog too,
just like instantly win a team fight. Yeah, Roadhog's another one of those cheesy characters like that. But those playstyles only get you so far up the ranked ladder, and you really are kind of cheesing your way through the ranks. When you get higher, people aren't going to let you do that. They're going to have higher awareness. They're not going to let you just freely flank like that, or they're going to be able to react fast enough if they do catch you on that flank. So it's going to be able to kind of like win games in the short term, but since you're not really learning the game as a whole, it's going to cap your improvement overall. And people who do kind of like cheese their way into higher ranked Overwatch usually get really frustrated after their character is nerfed, or if they try and kind of adjust a different playstyle, because their game knowledge, their game ability is still hundreds of SR below where they're currently at. It's just how the ranked ladder worked. It's how it's going to work. It's how he's always worked. And yeah, it's not really something that you can use as the basis for balancing a game.
I did want to ask, we are expecting a hero like in 6 weeks' time. Hero 30 should be in the game around then. What personally would you like to see? What sort of abilities or playstyle do you think Overwatch could benefit from?
Well, the first thing is that D.Va absolutely needs a competitor. Even though her defense matrix has been nerfed, the cooldown is from 1 second to 2 seconds. She's still, that's like a nerf to her power level overall. It's not a nerf to her utility or her versatility, which is so strong. First of all, defense matrix is an irreplaceable ability. Nothing even comes close to the power level of a defense matrix. But then you also have D.Va in the state currently where she can still fly, she can still defense matrix, and she can still shoot missiles, and she can do those all at the same time with 600 HP. So if they're going to keep D.Va in this state, they need somebody else who can compete against her or do similar roles. And we saw this with the introduction of Orisa, where Reinhardt, there was a point in time in Overwatch where everyone thought that Reinhardt was absolutely mandatory to play the game. It was the case. He was over 90% pick rate in both ranked play as well as pro play. And you look at kind of it now and you're like, well, in GOATs, sure, but there's still a lot of times you'd play Orisa and a lot of times you'd play Winston. But D.Va is still basically like the Reinhardt of Season 1. He's just an absolute must pick. And there's not really, I don't really think the answer is to nerf D.Va, because that ability and that that role of being able to bully people off of the high ground, as well as having that defense matrix, those are just like so many powerful tactics and roles come from D.Va and can only be done by D.Va that she needs a competitor in the way that Reinhardt got a competitor in the form of Orisa. So this weekend is the Tournament of Future Champions. It's a tournament for the Tier 2 and Tier 3 scene. The best unsigned teams in North America will be going head-to-head in a tournament with hero bands. So I'll be streaming the North American version of that tournament on Saturday, and I'll be streaming the European version of that tournament on Sunday. That's the 19th and 20th of January. So I'm also in the middle of a move to LA. I'm recording this from the floor of my new apartment. So I'm not going to be streaming a lot this week, but definitely catch me this weekend, 19th and 20th, for the Tournament of Future Champions. Thanks for having me on, Ryan.
And that's it for this time. Thank you very much for watching. As I said, we'll have another video with Jayne talking about the PTR pugs that he had with the pros and what he learned, but that will be around the time of the Tournament of Future Champions, which is happening this weekend. So do jot it down in your diaries. You can find more details in the description below, and I'll see you guys very soon. Take care. We'll see you next time.